Hey everybody, I wanted to take a quick minute to discuss 300 Blackout. Today's video, I wanted to look at point of impact shift when moving from supersonic ammunition to subsonic ammunition, or better yet, from subsonic to supersonic. For me, 300 Blackout fits a very special role of subsonic inside of close distances. Now, I've made and will make more videos on 300 Blackout in super and sub, but today I really wanted to focus on the delta or point of impact shift between the supers and the subs. Now, supersonic is going to be the house of pain ammunition. So a lot of guys who say, well, 300 Blackout can do both. The question is, can it do both? You know, the dual sport motorcycle that can go from dirt to pavement, pavement to dirt. Yeah, but you have to stop and switch your tires to do that on your dual sport motorcycle. In other words, take out the magazine, lock the bolt to the rear, insert a new magazine, and then send the action forward while feeding a new round to go from supers to subs, unlike the dual sport motorcycle. And then you might even have a different point of zero, depending upon how closely you zero your rifle. If you're a 25-yard or a 50-yard guy, you might notice it a little bit less. But today, to show the point, we're going to shoot 100 yards to confirm the general zero that I've got in this rifle, and then see how much lower it impacts, or see how much lower the subsonics impact over the supersonics. Guys, if you haven't already, please consider hitting that like, comment, subscribe button. That stuff really does go a long way for the channel. I really appreciate your guys' support thus far. Let's get into it. And the point of needing that bolt handle. So Anarchy Outdoors sells a bolt handle that really smooths out running this bolt. And it's like absolutely necessary to get that bolt handle. The Ruger American is such a great rifle, but it's like, it's kryptonite, its Achilles heel is that it does have a rough bolt because it is a $400, $500 rifle. So getting that Anarchy Outdoors bolt, which I have on the way for this one, is absolutely necessary in my opinion. All right. Wow, okay, so the first round is just below the orange disc. The second round is 1.4 mils above it. So we have the average of 1,050 on a 16-inch gun. Now, group size, not so impressive. As I mentioned before, there's quite a spread between round 1 and round 2. Round 3, I'm not even sure I'm seeing. I might have to hop on my spotting system. All right, so we're going to aim at the bottom center abdominal target in order to give myself room to the north for that point of impact shift, and then we'll drop in some supersonic. Okay, now we've got our supersonic rounds. We're going to go again, bottom center abdominal target on that same left target. Here we go. I think I can not wear ears. We'll see. Yeah, I can not wear ears. Okay, so it's 5 mils above the point of aim. What I was aiming at was the bottom center abdomen, and the impact was 5 mils above it. Okay, those two are about a ½ inch apart, which isn't bad. That's a 1960 on velocity. Okay, shot 2 and 3 are almost touching each other. So accuracy-wise, we've got a big improvement from the subsonic, which, you know, for obvious reasons, subsonic isn't all that accurate. And then especially the rate of twist of this rifle could also be playing a role. So total average, we're at 1958. We'll go down range and take a look at those impacts and discuss the difference. Okay, to make sense of these impacts, for the subsonic rounds, I aimed right here at the orange dot on the face. You got round 1, round 2, and round 3. That's why I couldn't quite see it. It snuck just under that piece of wood in the shadow cast over it, so I couldn't quite see it. And group size-wise, I mean, that's a pretty substantial group size. And then you can see it's oblong. This one's kind of coming in at this angle. This guy's coming in at kind of this angle. This guy hit wood first, so it's hard to tell. So our bullets probably aren't terribly stabilized, and that's going to have something to do with the rate of twist and that it's more designed for supersonic ammunition, because I think most people are tailoring their 300 Blackouts towards the supersonic because the subsonics are kind of limited in their accuracy. Anyways, if perhaps you had a higher rate of twist, you might be able to stabilize and get a bit more accuracy out of it. Now, here is the group from the supersonics. Now, I did not aim here, let me be clear. I actually aimed at this target, the bottom center abdomen, and my strikes were up here. So that's where we're seeing this huge delta between whether you should zero your 300 Blackout with supersonics or subsonics, and at what distance you should zero it. If we scoot the target closer, we can find where they'll be a little bit closer together, but it will only be at that distance. So you can imagine that this is probably a good 100-yard zero if I move moved it, let's say 5-6 mils down for my point of impact, but then my subsonics are going to impact like 5 or 6 mils below my intended target. I would love to hear in the comment section what you guys do with your 300 blackouts. Are you zeroing it with supersonics, or are you zeroing it with subsonics? And at what distance do you choose to zero it? I'm thinking I might move my zero in to closer, maybe 25 or 50 yards, just so that my supers and subs kind of hold hands a little better, and then at the further distances, I guess just accommodate for that. So what I've done is I've dialed my information in for a 25-yard zero, and then without dialing any changes, we'll scoot back to the 50 and then to the 75, the 100. Probably just go 25, 50, and 100 for the sake of time, and see how it affects our point of impact when we go from subsonics to supersonics, so we can not just verify a quantifiable amount of bullet drop, but also see the difference between the supers and the subs, as opposed to what I've done before, which is zeroing at 100 and then finding the 6 mils of difference going from supers to subs. We're going to start close and see what we can get away with before it becomes too noticeable. Make sure you hit those buttons for the like, comment, subscribe. It really does go a long way. It doesn't cost anything, so if you could just hit those buttons, I think it's right here, hit those buttons. I appreciate you guys. Let's get into it. Alrighty, we're here at the 25-yard line with subsonics. We're going to shoot for the top center abdominal target. Top center abdominal. Here we go. Alrighty. I would say we're zeroed. Alrighty, now we can take a peek. We've got the first one is just a little bit low. The other two stacked right on top of each other. So we have a 25-yard zero with the Subsonic 220 grain stealth ammunition. Let's move back to the 50. Alrighty, we are now here at the 50-yard line. Let's go top center abdomen again. We should be impacting a little bit on the high side, I think. Alrighty, now we've got our 50-yard group, and that is these three right here. They almost stacked right on top of each other. So excellent accuracy for subsonic at 50. And the delta's pretty small. I mean, we're looking at inch to the north, inch and a half. So I won't complain much. I think for the 100, I'm going to aim center chest because I really have no idea where it's going to go. Alrighty, I think as it pertains to subsonics, I have my answer. So I've got the 25-yard line, point of aim, point of impact. The 50-yard line, it looks like I'm an inch and a half to the north, which I would say is pretty negligible for most situations unless you're shooting really small critters. Then for the 100-yard, this was my point of impact. So we're looking at, you know, not a terrible amount of drop. Now the next question we have to ask is, if we keep a 25-yard zero, what happens when we switch over to supersonic ammunition? Well, let's find out. Switching over to the supersonic rounds, we've got point of aim right here, we've got point of impact right here. Kind of similar to what happened at the 50-yard line. We're really about an inch, inch and a half to the north, going from the 25-yard subsonic zero and switching supersonic ammunition to the weapon. Let's see what happens at 50. Okay, so again, with the 25-yard subsonic zero, aiming in at this target, our point of impact is one inside of the other here, another one over here. So now we're getting into a more noticeable amount. However, I don't know if it's really that bad. I'm thinking 25-yard subsonic zero might be just the way I do things going forward with 300 Blackout. It could be that it's still on the rise. It could be we've not hit our max ordinate yet. So let's see what happens at 100 with those supersonics. For center chest, because I have no idea where this is going to go. Well, let's go take a peek. Okay, so this is quite a lot to debrief. First off, I don't want to say I'm wrong, but I'm impressed that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's still bad. The answer is I'm not going to take 300 Blackout on a coyote hunt, just because if I see a coyote and I have a 100-yard zero, which is what most of my guns are, and I see that coyote at 80, 100, 120, I'm going to aim it right at that coyote. And in this case, it's going to put those rounds over the coyote. So I don't know that I love the idea of shooting supers out of that 300 Blackout with the 25-yard zero. So this is supers at 100. So What's impressive, however, is the subs. That with Subsonic, we got point of aim, point of impact at 25. At 50 yards, we got just an inch high, and I don't think that matters. Most of the time when I'm shooting on a tripod, you know, I'm stable, I'm relaxed, I'm able to take a last breath and really put fundamentals into my shot. But when there's a coyote trotting in, some of those fundamentals kind of go to the wayside, especially in combat situations. So I'm going to say that this delta is small enough for me not to care too much. And this might validate for a lot of guys having a 25 or a 50-yard zero with their 300 blackouts in supers or in subs. I mean, I could see someone arguing that a 50-yard zero is better than a 25 because I'd rather be impacting a half an inch low rather than a half an inch high. I think you could go either way with it. But once we got out to the 100 with the subs, it seems that we have a more noteworthy drop, but you know, still you're talking 4 or 5 inches. So if you keep it in your mind that that coyote is beyond 50 yards, or probably if this is 50, maybe 75 or 60, it might re-intersect, and then after that you're dropping below. So I would argue that all in all, I am very pleased with 300 Blackout in subsonic ammunition in around the 75 yards and in. Once you hit that 100-yard marker, there's a noticeable amount of drop. I would say on a man-sized target, who cares? On a coyote, maybe you can get away with it, but once you get a little beyond that 100, you might have troubles. Most coyotes you're calling into like 85 yards and less anyways. So I can see a very strong merit in deer hunting and coyote hunting with subsonic 300 Blackouts. I personally am not going to, just because in Arizona it's so wide open, and sometimes you have a dog who just won't come in any closer to 150, 200 yards, 300 some cases, so it's really better to have a flat shooting round. Now, moving over to the supersonic ammunition. We were only about 1.5 inches high for the 25-yard line. So I would say 25 yards is probably not all that noteworthy. And maybe if you had a 50-yard zero, you would have like no shift. So yet again, another merit for arguing that a 50-yard zero might be the cat's meow for 300 Blackout. Then as we moved into from the 25 to the 50, you can see there's a little bit further to the north, but again, when a coyote's trotting or otherwise, you might not even notice that. When we're at the 100 with the supers, that's a noteworthy delta. I might say all in all, maybe if you're a supersonic kind of guy, you might zero 50 yards and then have your subsonic just a hair below, and then at 25, just a hair below that. I think that might be a very viable way of doing business if you're a 300 Blackout kind of guy who's doing supers and subs. It seems that that 50-yard marker is seeming to hold hands, at least on my setup. Some things to keep in mind: sight over bore and barrel length. We should all be cooking around the same velocities given 300 Blackout such a low pressure round. We're probably getting up to the same speeds, even if you are like a 10 or 12 inch barrel guy, maybe even a 9-inch barrel, you're probably at the same velocities. It's just that sight over bore, I might be a little bit lower because it's a bolt gun. That bolt gun's probably about 1.5 to 2 inches, 1.5 to 2 inches sight over bore. An AR-15 is more typically 2.5 inches or higher, depending upon what type of optic and mount you're using. So it could be you get a slight delta, but I'm thinking going forward, I might just rock out to a 25 or 50, probably a 50-yard zero with supers and subs. And then, yeah, they kind of are interchangeable. But when you go to that 100-yard line, you're seeing a big delta here. The subs are falling 4 or 5 inches below. You know, the supers are still going to be above by about 6 inches. So the delta increases at the 100, and I'm sure beyond. But inside of that 50, just north and south of that, I think you've got a really good match for having a 50-yard zero and toggling between supers and subs, as long as you're staying inside of that distance. Guys, if you're finding this fun and educational, I truly enjoy learning, and I don't claim to be any type of an expert. I just ask questions and love doing experiments. So if you're enjoying this as much as I am, please throw me a comment in the comment section just saying that you're enjoying it or that you dig the channel. It really does go a long way. Make sure you hit that like, comment, subscribe, and share with a buddy, all those good things. I appreciate you. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the comments.